Welcome back to MUF Official. This is the start of a new series in which we will go through the chapters of the IGCSE syllabus. Today we are going to study Chapter 1 States of Matter, Unit 1.1 Everything is made of particles. Particles. The big idea in chemistry. All chemistry is based on one big idea that everything is made of very tiny pieces called particles. Most single particles are far too small to see. When you look at a jar of a chemical in the lab, you're looking at a collection of countless trillions of tiny particles. Think about that. And when you observe a chemical reaction, for example, an acid dissolving a piece of metal, you are seeing the results of trillions of tiny particles reacting together. This is one of the things that makes chemistry so exciting. For centuries, people had guessed that water and air were made of tiny particles, but they could not see the particles, so could not prove it. Then, in 1827, a botanist called Robert Brown was studying pollen from a flower in water under a microscope. He noticed that the pollen granules jiggled around. They were not alive, so why were they moving? 78 years later, Albert Einstein came up with the answer that the granules were moving because they were being struck by tiny invisible particles of water. In fact, their movement proved that water is made of tiny particles. Today, everyone accepts that things are made of particles. Most particles are so small that we cannot see them directly, even with the most powerful microscope. But there is evidence for them all around you. You see, in sunlit rooms, you sometimes see dust dancing in the air. It dances because the dust specks are being bombarded by tiny particles in the air, too small to see. In cooking, the smell spreads. The smells are due to particles which spread because they are bombarded by the particles in air. This is an example of diffusion. Diffusion. Look again at the two examples above. The particles mix and spread by colliding with other particles and bouncing off in all directions. This mixing process is called diffusion. It takes place in liquids and gases. The result is that particles spread from where they are more concentrated until all the particles are evenly mixed. Look at the drawings on the right. So, what are these tiny particles? The smallest particle that we cannot break down further in chemical reactions are called atoms. In some substances, the particles are just single atoms. For example, air contains single atoms of argon. In many substances, the particles consist of two or more atoms joined together. These particles are called molecules. Water and bromine exist as molecules. Air is mostly nitrogen and oxygen molecules. In other substances, the particles are atoms or groups of atoms that carry a charge. These particles are called ions. In example 3 above, the particles in potassium manganate are ions. Thank you for listening. The chapter 1 States of Matter, Unit 1.1 Everything is made of particles.